nation chrétienne. Nous sommes un frère en Jésus-Christ, liés par la parole de Dieu. Aimer l'Afrique, c'est notre sœur. Le créateur des cieux et la terre n'a-t-il pas dit après 50 ans, laissez l'esclave s'en aller, attends la liberté. Il n'y a que toi qui connais le bouton sur lequel il faut appuyer pour que l'Afrique soit sauvée. Dis un mot pour l'Afrique. Dis un mot pour l'Afrique afin que l'Afrique soit sauvée. Oh Jesus. Africa, 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 attends ma liberté. Africa, Africa, non, non, non. Chez moi, après vous me les prêtez. Cela est un prêt sans fin. Déliez-moi, je vous en prie. J'ai essayé de m'épanouir pour liguer mes frères contre moi. J'ai essayé de me libérer de vous pour les rébeller contre moi. Africa, 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 attends ma liberté. Africa, 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 attends ma liberté.
There's a great creator who is just and faith. He won't take long to wonder us, justice and fairness. We have shed a lot of tears for more than enough. Enough is enough. Africa.
Africa,
Oh yeah.
Africa,
Oh yes.
Africa, attends ma liberté.
Together united,
Africa,
we will stand and fight. Oh, we got
Africa, attends ma liberté. Africa, 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 attends ma liberté.
In the operation room, Elizabeth made a mistake and her own child died. She was devastated. After reporting the death of her daughter, the mortuary collects the body. Due to the reason of death, the police become involved. They discovered that Elizabeth was practicing illegal operations at her clinic. Just before the funeral, Elizabeth's practicing license is taken away, and the police began to look for her. This incident left Elizabeth heartbroken. She couldn't believe it. It reminded her of her father's death, then the betrayal of Pastor John, and now her own child. Elizabeth was depressed. Her clinic was shut down, and news of this went all over the city. She couldn't take the embarrassment around the community as rumors spread that she killed her own daughter. Everyone began to badmouth her, so she packed her bags and went away to another city where no one knew her so that she could be alone and escape the shame. Next time on Elizabeth.
That's really amazing. So today we're going to look at climate change, and I'm really excited because it's a very sensitive topic, and sometimes it's not easy because the enemy has really polluted everything to the point where we do not even know what is true or what is not true. Because I remember last time when I was speaking of climate change, I was attacked because some people were saying, no, it's a scam, there is no climate change. But if you look around you, for example, where I'm in India right now, Mr. Ndaiken is a witness. It can get up to 48 degrees here. People are walking, covering their faces with the clothes. And it's terrible how we have polluted the house which we came here to do our spiritual experience. The top 1% of the world are responsible for all this, but there's a reason why they do this. It's very, very unfortunate. So we're going to start with this one. I want to get your input because it's a big topic. It's a very sensitive topic. It's a very sensitive topic. Whether the world where we live in, the earth, is it flat or is it round? There are many debates around this. Many people are flat earthers. Many people believe the earth is round. Well, most African people do not have the resources to build a spaceship to go up and verify all this, because most of the information which is out there is owned and by NASA. NASA is funded 40 billion US dollars per year. Ever since we were kids, we have been taught that the earth is round. We have put this in our heads for a long time. So it's very difficult to go against it, because the media in the world, if you have money, you have power, and you can control. So we have been taught from a young age the earth is round. I believed in this for a long time. Maybe I still do. But I came across some information and about the flat earth. So some of the information was a bit convincing. But if you look at, there's one interesting verse in the scriptures. Mind you, when we read the Bible, it does not mean that we're religious. No. Not everything in the Bible is absolutely nonsense. There are some things which are many lies in there. There are also some truth in there. So you have to be able to have a spirit of discernment to know exactly how to decode the scriptures, to know that even in the Lord's garden, there are weeds. So in Joshua chapter 10, verse 12 to 13, it says that there was a great battle which was happening. And unfortunately, the battle was not ending and it was already getting late. So Joshua, it says that he told the sun to stand still in the sky until they defeated their enemies. Then the sun began to move. Now the question is, if this scripture is true, where does this scripture apply on these two images? Does it apply that the earth is round, or does it apply that the earth is flat? Because if the earth is round, so and the earth rotates around the sun, who stopped? Did the sun stop, or did the earth stop? But if the earth is flat, was he able to stop? Because in the flat earth, the sun is within the earth atmosphere. So the question is the verse absolutely nonsense, or is the verse showing us which configuration is our planet in? But before that, I would like to get your input first. Just your basic inputs. I don't want us to be long because we have so many things to cover. Which do you think is true, flat earth or globe earth? Queen Nancy, what are your thoughts? Is our earth round or is it flat?
Hi, thank you. I could never really understand what the fuss is about, flat earth or round earth. Because for me, it's like you take an apple and you cut it halfway. Where you're standing, what are you going to say? Is the apple round or is the apple flat?
Very interesting.
So for me, I think the problem that I have with such discourse is, what are we trying to achieve out of it? Number one. And really, do we need to spend so much time arguing whether the earth is flat or the earth is round? There is a lot more things that we should delve into, the study of things around us, or things that we live amongst, the plants, the trees, the animals, whatever, in order for us to move forward as human beings, and not arguing whether the earth is flat or round. That's
very interesting, Queen Nancy. That's very, very important input that you've put. What are your thoughts, Miss Catherine?
I would have to definitely agree with Miss Nancy. She's got definitely a good point. I do agree with her. That's my views as well. Because there are a lot more important things out there than, whether distinguishing the earth is flat or round.
Very impressive. What about you, Mr. Jackson? What are your thoughts?
From my perspective, since I haven't been to space, I would say the earth is round. But its typical reason is dark in one place and light in another. But I could be wrong.
Interesting, Mr. Jackson. What about you, Mr. Zivai Tsike? Mr. Zivai Tsike is here with us. What are your thoughts? So Zivai Tsike?
Oh, thank you very much, brother, and a very good afternoon to the fellow classmates. For me, I think it's very important that we understand how the earth is so that we can know where we are and everything. For me, it has begun to make sense now that I have come to understand that the earth is actually flat, because that's what I observe. From the picture that you sent, that's on the screen there, we can actually see the sun when we say the sun is rising, which means it's from that white part. And then it goes up. That's what we observe with our own eyes. And then when it's setting, it means it's on the other side of the dome. So that gives us orientation. I think that's the significance of whether it is round or flat. Whereas the globe or the globe Earth is a fabrication which is meant to push a certain narrative, which has the effect of keeping us ignorant of certain things, especially about our Creator, and it refutes a lot of things that are true. But because of the narrative, if we adopt the narrative of the global Earth, then we somehow are far away from understanding our Creator and His creation and the reason for His creation.
Thank you so much for that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Divine. Absolutely interesting. Because I don't want us to spend so much time on this debate, because I am in my own conviction and my own study. I think I am more on the part where it's flat, but I'm also sometimes I ask myself some questions on the round part as well. I mean, Ms. Nancy and Queen Catherine say we can spend so much time on other things and resources, but you know, NASA spends $40 billion US to maintain the narrative that the Earth is round. And the question is, why would someone spend so much money to keep this narrative going on? But that money could be used to help humanity, other things, but they're spending $40 billion to make sure Disney shows movies and their Marvel movies show people going to space and the Star Wars and all those things. Why are they spending so much money to keep a certain idea going on? Is the question. If you don't understand where you live in, you don't understand the house you live in, it's very difficult. Mr. Ndai, what are your thoughts before we move into our presentation? Mr. Ndai Mgavidi, what are your thoughts?
Well, personally, I think that I agree with what you just mentioned, that I think it's important because it does dictate the narrative that we then believe and live according to, like NASA, for example, and the movies we watch. And there's a lot connected to it, I believe, when it comes to the spiritual side as well. But that's just my own belief. But yeah, I do think that it's also something, it's a truth that is important, because that narrative that they push forward, I believe there's a bigger agenda behind it.
Very interesting, Queen Tendai. Thank you so much for that. I think we want to welcome Miss Eureka, who has joined us as well. We have so many queens today. I hope our kings can also be as ambitious as our queens as well. I hope one day we can be able to raise the funds as a community, to be able to raise scientists among ourselves, to be able to go out and really find out how the configuration of our house is. Because today, if you try to get your boat and sail over the other side, Interpol will arrest you. Apparently, there's a treaty that is there to make sure that nobody knows the truth about this. But we're going to jump into our session for today. We'll not spend so much time on this. So today it will be a subject of interest to all of us. We know you are hearing debates around all governments. They have come to a conscious realization that the world is not being run the right way. The world of Mama and Toto, Mother Earth is known as Mama and Toto in Congo ancestry. She is suffering. The temperatures keeps rising. You all heard about the heat wave that occurred, I think, some few years in Canada and Russia. There was a heat wave where there was there was a forest fire because of heat, and many people died in that session. So if the temperatures continue to increase, we're going to face a lot of problems in the world where we live in at the moment. Nonetheless, if the temperatures continue to rise, the oceans will heat up and the ocean water levels will rise. In the case where the earth is flat, you can see over there on the right side, we have an ice wall at the edges. So if the heat increases, those ice wall will melt. If the ice wall melts, the water level rises, which means areas and other places like India of low tides, Bangladesh, China will have flooding. I'm thinking you have heard of flooding in Indonesia and Philippines. Why? Why are they flooding over there? Of course, there are other human activities which is causing the flooding, but also the rise in the ocean levels is leading to the flooding. So many areas around the world like China, Pakistan, Indonesia, Egypt, Myanmar, Afghanistan, Nigeria, Brazil, Thailand, Democratic Republic of Congo, Iraq, even Cambodia are prone to flooding if the ocean levels rises. Other places will become deserts. Nonetheless, there's so much global warming. Rain is no longer falling in these areas, you know, of the Sahara Desert and even the Kalahari Desert in Namibia. So places like northeastern Brazil, southwestern Argentina, the Sahel, Zambia, Zimbabwe, all these places are prone to desertic areas to become deserts if the temperatures continue to rise, so it will become a disaster. So people or leaders in the world have come to a conscious realization that many governments across the globe are discussing on this issue of global warming. But sadly, we are seeing that the leaders in Africa that we have, the Africans, those that are representing us in the level of politics or in the level of science, they are not really interested in the issue of global warming because they do not understand its functioning. First of all, they are busy enjoying their various puppet Africans roles. So I believe you're hearing all the time on the issue of global warming, that the temperature of the world is increasing. They have begun to see that some gases that we are producing in the world, it is increasing the temperature of the world, called the greenhouse gases. So we're going to use Congo ancestry to be able to understand what exactly is this greenhouse effect, you know, because the gases that are basically increasing the greenhouse effect, what are those gases, for example? And how are those gases increasing the greenhouse effect, which is leading to the earth warming up? Our mother earth, Mama Ntoto, she's in pain and in trouble. So in this episode, we're going to see how we're going to give support to all of you, our ambassadors, Zola Bantu, to be able to understand that you cannot only solve problems in the world by prayers and shouting. I see pastors praying for global warming. That is absolutely nonsense. You can't be sitting in your church and praying for global warming to end. That is absolutely nonsense. You cannot only solve problems by prayer. That is the mentality of a slave. That is religion. Knowledge solves problems. You know, so we speak to all people in all domains, all different fields of endeavor, whether you're in politics or in science, so we can be able to see how we can have a good comprehension of this natural phenomenon called the greenhouse effect, and also on the side of African ethics, to be able to mind our behaviors, to be able to save our planet, Mama Ntoto. Because I told you the reign of 1,000 years is coming in 400 years' time. It means our children will need to be in a good environment to exist and in that reign of 1,000 years. So if we destroy the planet now and there's no oxygen, what happens to our children? So we have to think about the future as well, my dear brothers and sisters. So what exactly is greenhouse effect? You can see the pictures on the picture on the right. It is showing rays of sun coming from the sun, entering the Earth's atmosphere, and then some of it returning to the sun, but some of it staying within the Earth's atmosphere. So what happens when the sun sends what we call, the sun sends a lot of rays towards Mother Earth, and it sends what we call ultraviolet rays. You know, these rays on its way to the Earth, it transforms into photons of light and hits the surface of the Earth. Boom. And our Mother Earth receives these photons of light that come from the rays of the sun. And when she receives it, she feels good. She gets heat up. And then she also takes out rays which are a bit lighter and softer that we call ultraviolet rays. No, she receives ultraviolet rays, and then when she gets warmed up, she basically takes out infrared rays. So this infrared rays, it rises up to the world. It will not return all of it to the sun or to space if it exists. Nonetheless, our world, our Mother Earth, she's encapsulated with an atmosphere. So there's an atmosphere that encapsulates our Mother Earth, where all the heat that she receives from the sun, not everything goes back to her. Some remains in the Earth atmosphere to allow us to have a good temperature. So this atmosphere prevents the rays of the Earth to send back to our husband, the sun, from returning all to him. Some can go back to him, but some should remain in the world naturally to warm up the atmosphere. And you can see, for example, we say in South Africa it's 37 degrees, in Congo it's 27 degrees, in India it's 48 degrees. It's because of that heat. Not everything is going back. Mind you, if you take the part of the ice wall, if every heat goes back to the sun, we'll be living in total coldness, my dear brothers. So if the sun sends its light, the light of the sun touches Mother Earth, and Mother Earth distributes it in the world. And when she distributes it in the world, not all of it will return to the sun. Some of it will remain on the earth. Nonetheless, there is the layer that is holding back the warm heat that is coming from Mother Earth, and that layer is called the greenhouse effect house, or the ozone layer. It means it has enveloped the earth so that all that the sun is sending to us should not return to the sun. It should remain within the atmosphere of the Mother Earth to permit us to have a good temperature. So the greenhouse effect or ozone layer is something which is amazing, which was created by the universe to help us to live in harmony in the earth. It is a good phenomenon because when we're receiving things from the sun, if Mother Earth returns everything she's gaining, sunlight will not be with us here. The temperatures will be below 0 degrees Celsius. Nonetheless, she will send back all that wind of heat that will not be good for us. That is why the Creator created an envelope around the earth, the ozone layer, to block some of the heat to stay with us here in the atmosphere. So you see, even in the water cycle, you can see the same kind of scenario. You see water will evaporate from the oceans and it will arrive at a certain altitude and then it will become clouds. And then later on it will move in the clouds in the sky and then it will condense and it will fall back to us as rain. You can see even this greenhouse effect even in the water cycle. So in this world where we live, we release what we call greenhouse gases, which are called carbonic gases, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. So human beings, I think we're about 7.8 billion people in the world today. All of us are releasing carbonic gases. How? If you look at, for example, during respiration, a human being takes in oxygen from the trees. It enters into the human body to the nose and joins the body to the help of the hemoglobin, a protein that carries the oxygen to the cells. Many of you know how this works and is explained in biology. We take in oxygen and then we take out carbon dioxide. So we also produce carbonic gases as human beings. Another thing, industries also use oxygen, energies of the universe, to produce various products to provide food for us for consumption. All these sort of activities takes the energy of the universe, uses it, and releases fumes in the form of carbon dioxide in the world. In our houses today, for example, you can see right now I'm here in India. I've switched on my AC for heating. I'm using up the energy of the universe by the use of AC. I'm using a iron, fridge, cooking, fan in the house, lights. I'm using up the energy of the universe. It uses it, and it releases also what we call carbonic gases to the atmosphere. In the world that we exist today, we need to travel, we need to move around, we need to use cars and boats and all these airplanes. All of these things take in energy of the universe, and after using it up, it releases what we call carbonic gases, that is known as CH4, chlorofluorocarbons. So all these activities are releasing carbonic gases to the atmosphere. But what is the wisdom of our Creator? Our Creator, when he created this entire physical dimension, he made it perfectly because he knew human beings would be involved in different activities that will release carbon gases to the atmosphere. That is why he created what we call trees. So we release carbon dioxide through when we breathe as human beings, the cars, the transportation, the houses. Now the trees take these carbonic gases and then release oxygen. Now, in the oceans, the fish also take the carbon dioxide in the ocean that we release and give us back oxygen, my dear brothers and sisters. So in the past centuries, 1,000 years ago, when Africa led the world, there was an equilibrium. Listen very carefully. There was an equilibrium. You know, human beings were releasing gases of greenhouse effect in good proportions. In respirations, mind you, we never had cars back in the days. We used to use horses. So people would think that life in Africa was primitive because we used to use horses. But our ancestors were wise. Our ancestors knew that if you make a car, it will release carbon dioxide. So they preferred to use their horses. Were they stupid? No, because to think that Africans were using horses back in the days and chariots, we were stupid. No, because we knew we had to protect our environment. Creation of airplanes and trains and all these things and industries pollute the environment. Our ancestors, the Mpamvus, knew these things. That is why we prefer to use natural ways of traveling. We used to use boats, we used to use horses, we used to go on foot because we knew we had to protect Mother Earth also and maintain the proportions. So see where back in the days, we used to emit around 600 gigaton of carbon gases per year. We cannot simplify more on this. And Mother Earth also was absorbing this carbon dioxide. How? Via the trees and also via the oceans and releasing back to us oxygen. So we're producing carbonic gases at good proportions where the Earth can also take it via the trees and the oceans, the fish, and bring and give us back oxygen. But now we have arrived at a moment where the Western people, white people, have brought in their development society, all these industries they have built in China and even in America in the 17th century. You know about the Industrial Revolution. During that period, they began to pollute the environment. They began to pollute Mother Earth in an exaggeration manner in the automobile industry, in heating, construction of all types. Today you see air conditioning everywhere, and even intensification of farming. Today, farming, for example, in Europe, it consumes a lot of energy. Construction happening in China, all these skyscrapers in Dubai. We don't need skyscrapers. For what? All these things consume so much energy. For example, Mr. Ndai can testify here in India, if you don't have a house with an AC and fan, you can die. Because people in India cannot live without air conditioning. All that consumes energies, my dear brothers and sisters. So Mother Earth, it means we have begun to produce an extra 150 gigaton of carbon gases, and Mother Earth is not able to take all those things and transform them into oxygen. It is too much for her, my dear brothers and sisters. So it means if Mother Earth is not able to absorb these greenhouse gases, when the sun will send its rays to the Earth will send out infrared lights, rays of light, but all of it will remain within the world. It will not go back to the sun. Nonetheless, the greenhouse gases that have been added up, it has raised up the ozone layer and made it thick. It has become very thick. So many heat is not going back into the sun atmosphere. Many of the heat is remaining in the earth atmosphere. That is why the earth is heating up. Today in India, in June, it gets up to 48 degrees. It means you cannot even go out in the car or in the bike because the heat wave is dangerous. People die here because of heat wave. Why? Because India is involved in so many manufacturing things. They're cutting down the trees that are supposed to absorb the carbonic gases. Look at our stupidity. We are cutting down the trees that gives us the oxygen. Where I live right now, there are less trees, very less trees, and there are not even rivers around. It gets so hot here. So, my dear brothers and sisters, the earth is heating up, and worst of all, the ice wall is also melting. So it means the development, we are not afraid to say it, we'll say it. The development of the whites that have brought into the world and the Asians have brought world into, it will soon lead to the extinction of humanity if we're not careful, because the way the Western people polluted the environment in the 17th century and the way China is now polluting the environment, I'm telling you, I feel so sorry for your children in the next 50 years. I was telling Mr. Ndai that I don't know how people will live in India in 50 years' time, because I think by then it will be around 56 degrees. It means they'll have to close the schools because children cannot go to school in that amount of heat. Look at the picture on the right. 70 people in automobiles, but 70 people in a bus. Why can't we just remove all the cars that are polluting the environment and just have buses who save? Look at the space, just look at the space on the right as compared to the left. All those people, 70 people, creating traffic for nothing. Humanity, sometimes I feel so sorry because sometimes we are just so messed up in the head, like we don't think anymore. Our ancestors were better than this. Look on the right. Now, if you go back to Africa, we used to use chariots and horses. Oh, we were primitive. We used to walk, we were primitive. But to drive a BMW, it means you are developed. This kind of stupidity and nonsense. So ignorantly, many people have enjoying this materialistic development of the West. We are dancing and eating. Some of you are trekking and you think as if you've arrived in heaven, not knowing that your future generation will live in misery. It is sending a lot of carbonic gases onto the world and is thickening the ozone layer. The heat that Mother Earth is returning back to the sun is no longer going to space, but all of it is returning to us here. It's remaining in the Earth atmosphere. That is why we're seeing the temperature of the world is rising. So when those temperatures are rising, glaciation areas are melting fast. The oceans are taking up water by flooding many other areas. And dear brothers and sisters. So for example, you'd see by evaporation, water will evaporate and above, and it is going to, instead of water going to condense at 3,000 meter altitude, for example, it rises even further up to 6,000 meter altitude. Nonetheless, it has a lot of heat. Now at 6,000 meters of altitude of condensation, it's very cold. And then it's traveling with very high cold and becoming humid and not able to fall in other areas. Other zones are becoming deserts, like we say in Sahara and also Kalahari. So Mother Earth, due to our foolishness and stupidity, I'm sorry, it's the truth. That is why people all of a sudden have come to a realization that in the centuries to come, if we continue to walk this way, the temperature of the world will rise from 1 degree to 6 degrees. My dear brothers and sisters, this is catastrophic. Here in India, in summers, it gets 48 degrees. Imagine 48, it rises to 54 degrees. That would be a disaster. So they met up, my dear brothers and sisters, in Paris, COP21. I remember in 2015, these people who are responsible for destroying our world, they came up in Paris and they said, no, we have seen that last time we met in the COP, many countries have augmented their production of greenhouse effect. So if we continue like this, disaster will come upon the world, animals will die, flooding everywhere, it will be a disaster. What can we do? In the meeting, points was raised. The leaders, the US said that we have seen that if we, the leaders in the meeting told the United States that we have seen that on a minimum, one American produces about 6 tons of greenhouses per year. Imagine, one person in America produces 6 tons of greenhouse gas per year. Europeans produce 3 tons per year. We in Africa, my dear brothers and sisters, we don't produce anything. We don't, in Africa, the majority of Africans do not produce greenhouse effects in the same proportions as the United States citizens and the US citizens. For sure, in Africa, we produce, but not in the proportions of tons like in the West, McDonald's and West, so much waste of food in America, how the society is so messed up. So in the meeting, the leaders told Americans, sign this agreement that you can reduce your production by 8%. Europeans, you reduce by 7%. America said, no, we'll not sign it. And you know, President Trump walked out of the Paris Agreement in November 2020. The Americans said, no, we cannot accept this. We'll continue our development. Some nations in Europe accepted to sign. The Chinese said, wait a minute. It cannot be like this. We will continue to produce and develop because currently we are developing. China is booming now, but you guys, Americans and the Europeans in the 19th centuries, you profited and polluted and stole all the proportion of the greenhouse effect to develop your nations. Now we are trying to develop, you're trying to stop us. No, never. We're not signing this. We'll continue to produce these gases. Look, my dear brothers and sisters, see the reasoning of people in the world, my dear Africans. Mother Earth is in the verge of dying. Some people are saying, no, you guys produced in the 19th centuries. You developed your nations. Now you're trying to stop us from producing. No, we'll continue. Look at, my dear brothers and sisters, from the WFS. So things are very difficult. Many European countries have entered into transportation systems that will not consume a lot of energy. They want to make green energy. They want to make electric cars. All this is to see how they can reduce their carbon emissions. The Chinese have also said, no, we're seeing the Chinese says no, they will continue to produce, they'll continue to pollute the environment, continue to increase. But the sad thing, my dear brothers and sisters, we are seeing in our countries of Africa, there is no reasoning around these proportions. We keep saying that in Africa, we are the reservoir of the world's greenery, but how are we going to develop the preventers from using products that produce greenhouse gases? If they say no country in the world should produce any product that produces greenhouse gases, what happens to African countries then? They will end up saying, let us adopt renewable energies in a durable economy. What would that do? Now, what is surprising us, my dear brothers and sisters, is that many African leaders are not able to enter into these debates. My dear brothers and sisters. And worst of all, foreign people are now saying we will continue to produce and maintain our level of development. But because you in Africa, you're not producing, we will come to invest in your nation in renewable resources so that your quota of the greenhouse emission will take it and continue to produce. Look at this, my dear brothers and sisters. So, for example, if UK produces certain amount of greenhouse effects, because in the climate meeting, there are proportions of every country, so how much every country should produce per ton per year. Let's say, for example, this is the climate meeting of Zivai, we have Miss Nancy and we have Mr. Jackson. In the meeting, Mr. Zivai is allowed to produce 10 tons of greenhouse gases. Miss Nancy is allowed to produce 15 tons of greenhouse gases. And Miss Eureka is allowed to produce 5 tons of greenhouse gases. Now, Miss Nancy comes to Miss Eureka. Miss Eureka, since you in your country you don't produce anything, sell me your 5 tons of greenhouse gases. I'll give you money. I will invest in your renewable resources in your country. You sell me your quota of your greenhouse gases so I can continue to produce. Look at, so people are now using business with nature. Here in India, for example, where I live, there's a line called the Rapid Metro. Rapid Metro, which the India built here in Gurgaon, where I live, they had a negotiation with the Japanese government. They told the Japanese government that build us a metro, about 15 to 20 lines, we will sell you our quota of greenhouse effect. So the Indians sold their quota of the greenhouse effect of polluting the environment to the Japanese, and Japanese in return built them the metro station. My dear brothers and sisters, it is very sad. So we as Zola Bantu here, we're trying to see how we can wake up African scientists and political men and women of Africa so we can be able to enter into development with an approach that can satisfy and regulate the problem of global warming and climate change. It is a reality, because if you don't tackle it now, your children will suffer. When we think about good solutions on how to solve this, because it is very childish. These debates, sell me your quota, give me your quota, I'll pay you money. There are even countries today who give their quota and they get paid millions. For example, in Congo. In Congo, we sold our quota, we got paid 500 million US dollars. We were supposed to get 10 billion, but they gave us 500 million. Can you imagine? For selling part of our quota. So we're trying to prepare the reign of 1,000 years in Africa in 400 years' time. But if we continue to pollute the environment, our children will not live in this world in the right way. And because in African spirituality, there's reincarnation, my dear. You pollute the environment, you come back and reap. In the universe, you reap what you sow. Nothing like going to hell. No, you pollute the environment, you come back and reap. Look at the map on the right. That's the map of the green spaces available in Africa. You can see the upper top is already a desert. So the areas around Central Africa are the places with many vegetation. And I think in the world right now, there are 2 places which is basically the last place which is has the majority of vegetation in the world. There's Amazon forest in South America, and there's in Africa. It means there are only 2 continents right now that has the largest amount of trees, oxygen factories. We breathe today because of oxygen. And oxygen, we take it from the trees and the fish in the ocean, in the oceans. We have polluted the water, the fish are dying. We have cut down all the trees because we want to build ourselves a development skyscraper. I see African leaders going to, I want to make Congo like Germany. You want to make Congo like Germany for what? We don't need those skyscrapers in Africa. We don't need them for what? They only continue the pollution on the environment. So the last places on the planet which has more vegetation is Africa and Amazon forest. That is why when we speak about the scramble of Africa, you think they're coming only for resources. No, they are coming for these places, greenery, and they are ready to kill you and eliminate you if they want, because they know in 50 years' time, it will be impossible to live in India and to live in Europe. There are no trees to give them oxygen to breathe. So their destination is Africa. So they will kill you because they want to live in Africa where they have trees that produce for them oxygen. Go and watch the movie Avatar and see how those people invaded their land and began to cut down the trees. That movie Avatar speaks a lot of what will happen to Africa. So you in Africa, you are having debates, religion, praying, fasting and praying, and not thinking what's happening in the world. China is coming to Africa. Why? India is coming to Africa. Why? Everyone is coming to Africa. Why? Because we have the last reserve of the industry of oxygen. And it is the survival of the fittest. You want to live, you kill the other. But African leaders are not getting into this debate. I was speaking to one guy in Rwanda. I remember in Rwanda, he was telling me that when they were killing people in Congo, in the rainforest, they used to kill the pygmies. You know, the Americans would send their mercenaries. They would go in Congo, kill people. In the last 20 years, they have killed over 50 million people in Congo. Why? They are killing people in Congo because they noticed that the pygmies who were there, they used to just cut down trees and use them for their activities. So they were killing people in Congo so they cannot destroy the vegetation in the rainforest in Congo. Why? Because they want to protect it for their survival. They know in the future, they'll be coming to live in Congo. So they kill people in Congo many of the times, not because of mineral resources. They are trying to make sure that people don't consume and cut down those trees. My dear brothers and sisters, if you look at this map, this shows the vegetation spread of the earth. So for you to breathe but as a vibe, you need oxygen. And oxygen comes from trees. So if they cut down all the trees in the world, it means you will not be able to breathe, you'll die. Now, if you look at Africa and Amazon, they have the largest reservation of trees. It means if China and India continue to develop the way they are doing in America and lose their vegetation, they will not be able to breathe up there. They'll be lacking. So everyone will come to scramble for Amazon in Africa. My dear brothers and sisters, we have to see and think around this thing. This is serious business here. Because climate change talks, you rarely see many Africans in climate change talks. Only those big companies go and talk, and then they just tell Africans, you tell us that quarter of your percentage of greenhouse effect, give it to us, we'll pay you 500 million. We don't get in those debates because we don't understand the mechanism. Here I've explained to you in summary what exactly happens. You know, so we have to be serious about this, my dear brothers and sisters. If we really want to take Africa, you know, develop Africa, we also have to think about what sort of development we want in Africa. Is building a skyscraper in Namibia a solution? Is building a skyscraper in Zimbabwe a solution? So even by the understanding of how our Mother Earth functions, it gives us wisdom of if we need cars for moving or not, because we need to preserve the trees, because we cannot cut down the rainforest in Congo to build a smart city. No. Honestly, I would prefer we go back to riding horses in Africa. Remove all those cars which is polluting the environment. Those cars are polluting the environment. And worst of all, the American scientists, they know how to create cars with energy that does not produce carbon monoxide. They know. But they want you to use a car which runs on petrol. Why? Because petrol, you buy it from them and then they'll make money. Since the 19th century, there are technologies that can remove petrol, that can remove us from depending on petrol. There are technologies that exist. They know how to do it, but they won't tell you because they want you to rely on using petrol so they can continue to get money from you. It is a business for these people. So as the president of Zimbabwe, are you going to import more cars from Japan and China? Or are you going to find another way of moving. Because we have to also calculate, for example, we take the space of South Africa. Okay, how many vegetation do we have in South Africa? Okay, how many tons of carbonic gases does every South African produce per year? We calculate, okay, how many rivers do we have? How many trees do we have? Can all those tons that we release per year be absorbed by the trees and the water that we have in South Africa? Is it balanced or not? If it is balanced, then you can drive cars, you can move around in your cars, you can build skyscrapers because there's a balance. But if there's no balance, then you have to think about it. Because we in Africa right now, we can build skyscrapers, we can drive cars because we have the vegetation to absorb the carbonic gases. But the European countries don't have the vegetation to absorb the carbonic gases. So how dare they tell us in Africa to use renewable resources of energies when they are the ones that polluted the entire environment in the 19th century, in the Industrial Revolution? They polluted the environment. Now they want us to obey their orders of using solar energy. I see Econ took 1 billion from the Chinese to build solar systems in Africa, energy systems. So they want to tell us in Africa we cannot produce greenhouse effect gases because they are targeting our forests because they want those forests for themselves. So my dear brothers and sisters, that brings us to the end of our session for today. I want to get your input on what you've heard so far and how can we reflect around these areas. I'm just giving you an opportunity. If you're a leader of Africa, how are you going to address the climate problem in the international stage? For example, if you're sent to represent Africa in the climatic stage, we know that in Africa, we have the majority of the vegetation. We have one of the biggest rivers and lakes in Africa. It means those people need us. If an African just wake up, you understand that these people need us. They need Africa for survival because without Africa, they will not be able to survive. So I was very disappointed when our leaders went to negotiate in Congo. Instead of getting 10 billion, they got 500 million, but they sold the quota of their greenhouse pollution to some European countries. So, my dear brothers and sisters, but as invite to CK, what are your thoughts so far and what you've heard and how we can solve this issue? But as invite, and then we'll have Miss Eureka. But as invite.
Thank you very much, brother. Yeah, it's quite interesting the facts that you've been bringing up, on the issue of the contribution that our behaviors have on our environment. However, there are other considerations that I think are not always in the public domain regarding how much effect our consumption of these what we may call, what you call the greenhouse gases has on climate change especially. But on a larger scale, I think the biggest contributor to what we may call climate change is the HAB project, which is the high frequency active rural research, which has been going on for more than 50 to 70 years, if I may recall correctly.
It's happening where?
Yes. It's happening currently. It's in more than 29 stations around the world. But now, the way it's articulated to us about its significance or why it should be, it's said to be a military defense mechanism. But independent researchers have found that it's doing more harm than all countries combined in terms of global emissions and stuff. And yet here, the whole world is hoodwinked, if I may call it, into believing that it is our consumption that is causing climate change. But their manipulation of the ionosphere and the magnetosphere is the one that is contributing what we see today as global, as climate change, because now, like I said, these are things that are not in the public domain. So even arguing about them may not be the best thing to do. But since we may want to limit ourselves to what is researchable and accessible to us, then we may keep to this narrative that we're given. But like I said, on a greater scale, it is these projects by the US military that are responsible for what is happening in our atmosphere. And one other thing, the way the today's topic was started with the flat Earth and the global Earth. So the significance of the narrative of the global Earth is that we have a space, which we don't have in reality. We don't have space. There is no outer space. Above us, there is a ceiling, which is impenetrable. Nothing comes out, nothing goes out. So, yes. So that's why NASA being the only, or if I may call it, those who have the exclusive right to do research at that level are the ones we influence what we know about what's happening in our Earth. That's why they're the ones who manipulate all that. So even the information that we seem to make our decisions based on is all manipulated by the same people. So that's why even the COP 26 and the earlier versions of of those conventions, the same people who had more than 50% emissions, or who were responsible for more than 50% emissions of the world, did not agree to cut on their emissions, because they know that it is not the emissions that are responsible for what they are calling climate change. So like every other thing, it's just a business transaction. Yes, that's what it is all about. It's the control of money and everything else. So in short, that's what I would say.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Razif. I really am very, very interested in that. I would like to speak to you more about that, to be able to understand more about that project. Miss Yureka Isemede, what are your thoughts, Mrs. Isemede, and what you have heard so far? Miss Yureka, you there? Okay, let's have Mr. Jackson. What are your thoughts?
This discussion today brings me back to the
If you can speak a bit up, if you can speak up, yes.
Okay, let me see. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. This wanted Mama breadbasket of the world because he knew fertile land. And not only that, we in America, in America, I live in, the sun gets so hot. So, they're trying to cut down on the gas they would use for the car air conditioning and aerosol. To my thinking, it's too late already. We are 5% of the world's population, and we use an average of 24% of the world resources. So, yes, development causing all these problems. Before that, my Nigerian friend father was buried at the age of 1. What is this? Another night told me, when we go on trek, we go walk into the mountains, we pay some fine. He said in Africa, that's what you do. You walk everywhere. So we need to get rid of all these things. Walking. Not only that, it's good for the body. Look at my friend's 120-year-old father. So we need to reverse all this here so-called technology that they want to bring to us. We lived just fine before they came. As the speaker said before, money is the control of the world. We, as people, everything we say or do is copied after the West, because that's all we know. 1492, We don't know anything else except to be like them. And they have really assimilated us in so many ways. I'm not going to mention the ways now, but yes, we need to get back to walking and living like we used to so that we can cut down on these greenhouse gases.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Jackson. Thank you so much for that. I personally would love to get into these meetings of the greenhouse effect, especially in the climatic state, to see how we can, where we want Africa to play a role, because we cannot be forced to do certain things because of their own mistakes that they made in this 19th century. Miss Nancy, you are, this is your domain, Miss Nancy. Suppose you are our ambassador in the climatic stage. How would you deal with this quota issue of these people and that have put a business around the survival of humanity, and they're putting pollution quotas everywhere? Miss Nancy, what are your thoughts?
Thank you. First of all, just a correction. It's not Africa and South America that is left. It's only Africa. Because if we
have the Amazon forest, Miss Nancy.
The Amazon forest is fed by phosphorus dust from the Sahara Desert.
Okay.
Yes. So if they decide to green the Sahara Desert, this phosphorus will no longer be blowing over, because what it does is the dust from the Sahara blows over the Atlantic Ocean, then it feeds the plankton there in the ocean, and then it adds nutrients to the Amazon forest. And as we have observed during the COVID period, these guys, that is the 1%ers or whatever, they've already bought themselves land everywhere. In Namibia, for instance, when COVID started, the private jets were flying in, people were coming to enjoy the sun over here, leaving our brothers and sisters out there, to suffer. And that is exactly what's going to happen in the future.
Oh my God.
So I think, I always look at these things from a spiritual angle. And I'll tell you why. We look at it from a material world, and we're very arrogant as human beings because we think we can correct all these changes that are going on in the climate. However, the earth is an ordered system, and it corrects itself. And it's busy correcting itself. So the only people so it's not an issue that we are doing something for the earth. No, we're very arrogant when we say that. Because without us, the earth is still going to correct itself. The earth is alive. And if you even you mentioned the issue of the trees actually have a double duty. Because from the sun, the trees get its energy and it feeds. The leaves extract energy from the sun, and with the water from rainfall, etc., it feeds the tree, and as a byproduct, then it produces oxygen that we use for our breathing. Now, if you look at the issue where Bill Gates wanted to block the sun, you can look at it from a point to say, okay, global warming, he wants to block the sun. But if you look at it from a spiritual angle, it had nothing to do with global warming. It had to do with the data that the sun rays was transmitting, magnetic data that we need, especially us as melanin people, because we are energies at the end of the day. And that is what they wanted to block, because this sunburst only comes out at certain times, because there are seasons for everything. So one has to be very careful when you listen to all these global warming stories, etc. And then I can remember when they pushed for the carbon emission tax in Namibia, for instance, where they said every new an old car that is being imported in the country, you need to pay carbon taxes. It's just another way of raising taxes. And where it's going, according to the patents that I'm analyzing, is they're going to start measuring the carbon emissions of every individual on the planet. We are energy beings. We also produce energy. In the future, and the technologies are there, we will be forced to offset, we will be paid almost like what they are trying to do with the universal basic income grant, or we will be paid to produce energy that can keep their industries alive. And that's how we will be paid. But it will be energies that will be produced by our bodies. And that's where we're going. So this is just, they're doing it step by step. But fortunately, since we have access to the patent, to the global patent database, it gives us a bird's view. If you are able to connect the dots of where the world is going and where they're moving with all of this. So if you combine that with the spiritual angle, then you'll have a better understanding.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Miss Nancy. That is beautiful. I always love when we bring amazing perspective into this. Absolutely amazing. Miss Eureka, for bringing the spiritual aspect into this. Absolutely interesting. We'll have Miss Eureka, and then we'll have Miss Tendai, and then we'll end our session for today. I think welcome, Mr. Frederick, for joining us today. Thank you for joining us, Miss Eureka.
Yeah, thanks. My thoughts on it is I also agree with you on, us not needing all these innovations, quote unquote, and just going back and living like we were before in order to protect our planet. So, but how would that work? Because I mean, in the sense of like, who would even quote unquote permit us to do that? Because it's for the simple thing as the energy summit, those sort of meetings for Africa, if it's happening in a European country, those sort of meetings just the meeting, if it's happening in a European country, not even in an African country, how much more these sort of talks, who in the West would permit this to even come to fruition? That's my only concern. But we all of us simple Africans can wish that all we want, but at which point would that even? We're not the ones really making the decisions, are we?
Thank you for that input, Miss Eureka. And I can see Mwatu Angoma. Mwatu Angoma, if you'd like to come in, say a few words before we end today. Mwatu,
Okay.
I think you've been here for a long time, so you've been able to listen. Mwatu Angoma, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts are this. I believe nature is intelligent, and it has a booting system in case anything gets out of hand. And in this case, if the conditions deteriorate to a certain degree, to the extent that the planet can no longer sustain life forms, it will have like a reset. It has a reset button. The planet has a reset, let's say, scheme of its own, because there's no way you can tell me that this planet has been existing for billions and billions of years, and only for a bunch of people to come out somewhere, master technology, pervert it, and try to destroy that planet. No, nature always wins, and life always finds a way. And my thoughts are just that. The planet will come up with a plan on how we're going to survive. That's all I can say.
It's a very interesting input that you make, Mr. Watu, because Hey, sorry, I think my mic was off. Thank you so much, Mr. Mwatu Wangoma, for that input. So to understand the macro, sometimes it's better to observe the micro. I can give an example. Suppose you, Mr. Watu Wangoma, you begin to smoke and drink, and you're taking all sort of toxins into your body. I think Miss Nancy always mentions this. And then you begin to pollute your own body. What happens? It leads to your death. You die. There's nothing like, oh, nature comes and resets you because your body is now noticing that you're about to die because you've been taking toxins and it resets you. So where do we get this idea that because we have been polluting the universe and then all of a sudden nature will reset itself? No, we have to be very careful and also be responsible to know that a human being has a free will. So the actions that we take has consequences. So if we are taking action that is against nature, we are destroying nature. So nature will not reset itself because it has noticed, okay, I've had enough. What about your body? What does in your body reset itself when you've taken so many toxins and then immediately you become born again? No, you die. You decompose in the ground. So we have to be very careful also there to know that as we have human beings, we have a free will. We have to make decisions that is in favor, in harmony with nature. Mr. Ndai, what are your thoughts, Mr. Ndai?
Am I audible?
Yes, Mr. Ndai.
No, thank you for the class. I agree with what my classmates said, some very valid points. And I agree with what Ms. Eureka said, the fact that even if we want a change, it's definitely not going to be something that comes easy because of the people who get to make these decisions. But if we had the choice to make these decisions, then I agree that there's so many unnecessary things in this world that do like produce all this carbon dioxide and everything that are not necessary. These innovations that we don't need, like the cars that you mentioned. Of course, we may still need them, but not as many as we use at this point in time. So yeah, I do hope that there is somewhere in the future where those in charge will not be the same kind of people, and it will be people who have the same vision we do, and so on. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ndai, for that. I really thank you so much for all your input, everybody. We have to be able to make the right kind of decisions. If we're going to have a community of Africa in the future, we have to think about what kind of food we're going to be eating and how are we going to produce those foods production that does not destroy the environment. Or we have to be able to understand also how much we're polluting and how much is being recycled. We have to think about whether we're going to continue using car which runs on petrol, burning combustion, releasing carbon dioxide. We're going to choose also, are we going to be involved in nuclear activities? You know, Mr. Zivai spoke about how they're doing all these nuclear activities by the American Army. You know, they're testing their nuclear weapons. All this is energy as well. So as a community, we have to think about these things, you know, because we want to be on the right side, you know, of nature. So I want to appreciate you all for joining us today for this session on climate change and really make good decisions. And I'm sure that we are not in the power right now in the world to make this kind of changes, but definitely know that we are going to take over soon. And because we're going to organize ourselves as a people, we're going to live in a civilization of Ubuntu. We're going to respect one another. We're going to respect Mother Nature. We will not pollute the oceans. We will not pollute the environment. We will live in harmony with the environment. Because even in the spiritual aspect, which Miss Nancy always mentions, there are beings of nature that in Congo sense we call they are Simbis. There are beings of nature that take care of the trees, that take care of the oceans, and take care of the Simbia Massa, take care of the water. The Simbia Mupepe, they take care of the air. You know, the Simbia Ntia, they take care of fire. Simbia Toto, they take care of the soil. So over time, we have lost our connection with them because we have also involved ourselves in activities that is destroying their work. You know, Simbia Minty is making an effort to make sure that by the time you throw a seed on the ground, the Simbia Minty is there to make sure that the tree grows and takes enough nutrients in the ground. Simbia Minty takes care of the trees. So if they're taking care of the tree for it to grow, then you come and cut it down. You see that you're disrupting someone's work. So our ancestors communicated even with the beings of nature to know where not to swim, what not to eat. Even in the jungle, there were some trees that you're not supposed to eat. There were some trees you're not supposed to cut because our ancestors communicated with the Simbia Minty. They would tell them, okay, this tree is good for diabetes, this tree is good for fever, take some some coconut leaves. Take some avocado leaves, boil it in water, cover yourself in the blanket, your fever will go. They learn these things from the beings of nature that we have lost contact with. So Western people produce technologies because they have lost that spiritual contact with the creator and even with the beings of nature to guide them on how to live in the earth in the right way. So we have to be able to make these kind of decisions, and for us to be able to return to being in contact with these elements, elementals, the Europeans call them the elementals of nature, to be able to understand how our Mother Earth is, we have to raise our vibrations to be able to be in contact with them. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. We apologize for taking so much of your time for today. I really appreciate you all for coming in today and discussing this important topic where we are touching one particular branch of spirituality, which is the Mpamvu. So we as Zola Bantu, we live in love, we live in purity, we live in justice, we are priests, we are scientists, we are judges, the three pillars of spirituality. We bring together the best of us, we build together, we don't distress. Olangangu lendo nsakumpamvu nzinga makaku matatu malemba Kongo tubunda pandu katuvani panduko. Have a beautiful week. Have a chance to go through our website. Amazing content is there, and the children education, parents education, life partner, and also society education. Check out our Zola Bantu store as well, and also Zola Bantu library has so many books over there you can be able to go through. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Miss Nancy Frederick. I'll be speaking to you by mail. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Thank you, Mr. Ndai, Ms. Eureka. Thank you for joining us today. You can watch the session again via our YouTube page and also our Facebook page. Have a beautiful week ahead. Be the best version of yourself. Show people around you love. Live in purity. It means have purity in your thoughts, in your ways, and in your actions. And treat people fair. It means to live in justice. It raises your vibration out of the third dimension into the sixth and the fifth dimension. You become a spiritual person. Identify if you're a priest, if you're a scientist, or you're a judge, and contribute your skills and your expertise in our Zola Bantu community. And let's bring together the best of us, and let's build together, but let's not destroy. Have a beautiful week, everybody. Bye-bye.
In the operation room, Elizabeth made a mistake and her own child died. She was devastated. After reporting the death of her daughter, the mortuary collects the body. Due to the reason of death, the police become involved. They discovered that Elizabeth was practicing illegal operations at her clinic. Just before the funeral, Elizabeth's practicing license is taken away, and the police began to look for her. This incident left Elizabeth heartbroken. She couldn't believe it. It reminded her of her father's death, then the betrayal of Pastor John, and now her own child. Elizabeth was depressed. Her clinic was shut down, and news of this went all over the city. She couldn't take the embarrassment around the community as rumors spread that she killed her own daughter. Everyone began to badmouth her, so she packed her bags and went away to another city where no one knew her so that she could be alone and escape the shame. Next time on Elizabeth.
ressources chez moi. Après vous me les prêtez. C'est là ta paix sans fin. Déliez-moi, je vous en prie. J'ai essayé de m'épanouir pour liguer mes feux contre moi. J'ai essayé de me libérer de vous pour les rebeller contre moi. Africa, 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 attends ma liberté. Africa, 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 attends ma liberté. Vous qui vous dites nation chrétienne, nous sommes un frère en Jésus-Christ, liés par la parole de Dieu. Aimer l'Afrique, c'est votre sœur. Le créateur des cieux et la terre n'a-t-il pas dit après 50 ans, laissez l'esclave s'en aller, attends la liberté. Africa, 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 attends ma liberté. Africa, Africa, non, 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 Africa, non, non, attends ma liberté. Oh Seigneur, tu es la plus grande révélation de la vie. Il n'y a que toi qui connais le bouton sur lequel il faut appuyer pour que l'Afrique soit sauvée. Dis un mot pour l'Afrique. Dis un mot pour l'Afrique afin que l'Afrique soit sauvée. Oh Jesus. Africa, 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 attends ma liberté. Africa, Africa, non, 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 Africa, non, Africa, non, non, attends ma liberté. Vous amassez des ressources chez moi, après vous me les prêtez. C'est là est un poil sans fin, déliez-moi, je vous en prie. J'ai essayé de m'épanouir pour liguer mes feux contre moi. J'ai essayé de me libérer de vous pour les rebeller contre moi.